Hello everyone, I'm Esther K. Welcome to my YouTube channel. And with no further ado, let's dive right into part 2 of I Got Married to a Man I Just Met. Aunt Dolly could only watch as her son drove off and then turned to me and said, "Joshua is swamped with work. Don't take it to heart." I smiled, and then told her, "I can understand, I don't mind it at all. Don't feel bad, Aunt Dolly, he has paid for my fare and I am ready to go home." Aunt Dolly rolled her eyes and asked me, "You are now married to Joshua, am I still Aunt Dolly to you?" I was caught in a daze for a moment before calling her Mum. And the old lady happily accepted the new title. And with a cute smile, she told me, "Now that we are family, if Joshua ever picks me, she will always have my back. This is because it took forever for her son to get a wife. And there was no way she was to allow Joshua to step all over me." But in my head, it was never going to happen because although Aunt Dolly was nice to me, Joshua was her blood, while I was only related to the family by marriage. I found it hard that the Shaw family would stand by me during a conflict between Joshua and me. Because that was the case with my sister's parents-in-law before the marriage. The in-laws were nothing but good to my sister to the point their biological daughter was jealous. It was a different story after the wedding. Every time my sister got into a disagreement with her husband, her mother-in-law would get into my sister's case about being a bad wife. In short, the son was always family while the daughter-in-law remained an outsider. Instead of going straight to Joshua's place, I decided to go to my sister's place because I had one major thing to do, and that was to let my sister know that I got married and that I was to move out of her house. About 10 minutes later, I arrived at my sister's home. Her husband had gone to work while my sister was at home doing house chores. Seeing that I was back home, she expressed her concern and asked what has happened at my workplace. I told her I took a day off, then I asked her about the morning conversation I overheard. With empathy, she told me that her husband was not trying to kick me out, but was simply under a lot of stress. I kept to myself, knowing well that it was my brother-in-law's covert attempt to throw me out. He earned a lot of money as a manager in a firm. My sister met him in college and they were working in the same firm when they got married. The man lovingly said to my sister that he will take care of her, so she stays at home, rest, and be healthy because they were planning to have a baby. My sister believed she had found the right man. She quit her job and became a housewife. She gave birth to lovely twins a year into the marriage and had no time to dress up between caring for the children and managing house chores. She paid no thought to her figure, nor could she break free from her routine and return to her career. Fast forward, 3 years later, my sister went from a young and beautiful woman to an overweight and unkept housewife with no time for herself. I'm 5 years younger than my sister. Our parents passed away in a car accident when I was 11, and since then, my sister and I had each other. The compensation from our parent accident would have been enough for us to complete our studies, but our grandparents from both sides of the family wanted a piece of it. With what was left, we had to scrimp and save to pull through college. Since our grandparents proceeded to hog the family home, my sister and I resorted to renting, and our renting became over when my sister walked down the aisle. Because my sister had talked to her husband to be about living with them after the wedding, and he was quick to say yes to taking my sister and I as one package, but his resentment was beginning to rear its ugly head. After we were done with house chores, we sat down for a cup of coffee and we began talking. Then I reached out to my handbag and took out the marriage certificate, showed it to my sister, and told her I just signed the papers, I am now married. I came back to let you know, I will be packing up and moving out in a bit. You got married. Her voice turned high-pitched, almost to a screech. Gazing at me in disbelief, she snatched the marriage certificate for a closer inspection. She saw my name alongside a stranger's name on the certificate, and attached was a photo of the newlywed. "What's this about? I never thought you have a boyfriend," she asked. The man in the photo was good-looking, but his piercing and callous eyes lay along with his facial features were a telltale sign that he would not be the easiest person to get along with. While on the way back, I had a story all thought out. I told her I have been in a relationship for quite some time, but he was always busy with work, that's why he could never make time to come and meet you. He proposed and I said yes. Then, we went to get married at the registry office. I told my sister that Joshua is a good man, so she should not worry, I will have a happily ever after. I tried to convince my sister, but she had a hard time buying my story. She had never heard of a boyfriend in my life, yet I was there telling her that now I got a ring on my finger, I'm married. My sister held my hand and told me, I know you must be angry because of what you heard, but there is no need to rush to marry or move out. I bet you have not known this boyfriend for long. Otherwise, you would not have waited until now to tell me. I released my hand from my sister and told her not to worry, my relationship with Joshua is a very strong one, and I got my happy ending. You should be happy for me, I told her. My sister could not stop the tears from rolling down her cheeks. I helplessly embraced her until she cried her heart out, and calmed down. I made a promise to my sister that I will be visiting him often because Joshua's place was not far from my sister's place. As the marriage was already sealed, my sister had no choice but to accept it. She went on to dig further into her new brother-in-law. I did not know much about the Shaw family, although I had known Aunt Dolly for 3 months, and I never pried into the family's private affair and often lent an ear to Aunt Dolly. All that I knew was that Joshua was the eldest son in the family and had other younger brothers. Joshua had a good job in one of the finest companies, and he was doing pretty well for himself as he owned a house and a car. I told my sister the little information I knew about Joshua, and having heard that Joshua had no debt on the house, my sister was convinced that I will be okay. After a series of interrogations, I successfully packed my belongings and moved out of my sister's house. I waved to her and my nephews goodbye before boarding a taxi to Joshua's place. I had heard about the Woodley estate, but never entered the neighborhood before. I got there in 20 minutes and it occurred to me that I forgot to ask Joshua the floor his house was on. I pulled out my phone to call Joshua, but I thought he might not pick up since he was still at work. I decided to call him through WhatsApp. Joshua was in a meeting, and everybody in the conference room had set their phone on silent mode, as no personal calls could be taken during this time. Joshua had also muted his phone. His phone was on the table, and he quickly noticed the incoming call on WhatsApp from me, but he did not save my contact the time we exchanged our numbers. My profile name Mermaid in the Deep Blue Sea popped out on the WhatsApp call. Joshua cancelled the unidentified call without a second thought and blacklisted the number. Being in the dark about Joshua's act, I went on to try messaging. I typed a message and tapped send, only to find that the text could not reach the recipient. I stared blankly at the screen of my phone, wondering why I can't reach him. Did I get the number wrong? I mumbled to myself. As I thought hard and long about whether there was a gap in my memory, and having determined I got the number right, I arrived at one possibility that Joshua had blacklisted my number. Did he forget that we just got married? I asked myself.